B'Shem Hashem Naaseh V'Natzliach, Shiur Torah, Buchim Habayim. We are here with our Tuesday night shiur on the series of the IGGERET HAGRA. Be'ezrat Hashem, tonight will be the siyum of this series, the completion of the series, Be'ezrat Hashem. This shiur, an entire series, is for the refuah shlema of my dear Rabbanit Levana Bat Sarah, Rav Ephraim Ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah Bat Anat. Also for Nehorai Emet Ben Hadassah, Avi Mori David Ben Nesriya, Imi Morati Doris Bat Jora, and also for a Atzlacha Rabba for Marsha Bat Julie, Ayla Bat Marsha, Samuel Ben Marsha, Cephas Ben Marsha, Alexander Ben Marsha, Louis Ben Marsha, and for all of Klal Yisrael and all of the righteous Noahides, especially the ones that continue to help us and all of the extraordinary endeavors that our dear organization, Be'ezrat Hashem, is doing for the sake of Am Yisrael, for the sake of the world, to achieve what we titled this shiur as acquiring peace, Be'ezrat Hashem. So as a short reminder, next week we have an event here in South Florida. All of you are invited, regardless of whether you're located. Be'ezrat Hashem will have a nice shiur, some interesting chidushim, some things you've never heard before. Be'ezrat Hashem. After the shiur, we'll meet with whoever wants to meet with us, give a blessing to whoever wants a blessing, and Be'ezrat Hashem have a wonderful time. Lots of free stuff, books, USBs, tzitziot, all types of wonderful things. Anyone that wants to attend, please go to the website bhchizuk.org. You could send us an email to leah@be'ezrathashem.org, or you could actually send a message through bhchizuk.org, or you could also become one of the sponsors of the shiur. We could either mention your name or not mention your name. That's up to you. But surely we need as much help as we possibly can get. And whoever wants the merits of every single person that's ever going to watch that shiur, going to their account, surely will invest in there. Aside from that, we have a couple of big things that we're working on right now. Be'ezrat Hashem will announce them in due time. As a big event coming up, biggest that we've ever had in Eretz Yisrael. We also have a couple of new books, Be'ezrat Hashem, coming out. We have some USBs. We have, Baruch Hashem, a big undertaking to go on. So for anyone out there that is looking for a place to invest their maaser, their chomesh, their tzedakah, please go to bhtorah.org or to be'ezrathashem.org or to our app, or you can simply send a check or whatever you want to do. Or you could just simply share this with anyone that you know that is looking to invest in Torah. With that being said, we have, Baruch Hashem, 39 or so, almost 40 shiurim. Up till now, this is the 40th shiur. Be'ezrat Hashem, 40 is a special number in Judaism. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shemayim to receive the Torah 40 days and 40 nights. And we also know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, after the Dor Mabul, the generation of Noach that sinned against Hashem, sinned against each other, lost their right to live, HaKadosh Baruch Hu cleaned up the world with a mikveh, a physical mikveh for the entire world, flooding the world for 40 days and 40 nights with the Mabul. Surely it took a year to recover from it before Noach left the Teva, but the main part of the Mabul was 40 days and 40 nights. We also know that a mikveh that a woman dips in, that to be pure for a husband once a month, has to have at least 40 se'ah of rainwater. And we see many times that the number 40 symbolizes renewal. The number 40 symbolizes a person as elevating their spiritual status. And Be'ezrat Hashem, due to these 40 shiurim that we've done, teaching the IGGERET HAGRA, the teachings of the Gaon Mivilna from this letter, are going to purify us and each and every single person that took on this series seriously and studied it and took as much of it into account and into their lives as they possibly can. And praiseworthy are those that did it, and praiseworthy are those that will review it once more and twice more and many other times, because there's an endless amount of Torah that the Gaon Vilna teaches us here. The Baruch Hashem, we went over not just reading the letter superficially, but dissecting it, analyzing it, breaking it down as it is the way in Torah. Now, the Gemara in Masechet Sukkah, in page 46a, says something that we have to look into and analyze in ourselves to see if we are in that place where, in the name of Rabbi Zera says, others say it was Rabbi Chanina Bar Papa who said it, that come and see how unlike the characteristics of matters pertaining to the Holy One, blessed is He, is the characteristics of matters pertaining to flesh and blood. In so many words, come and see how different God is to people. Not just in the obvious, but even in pertaining to the things that the people are dealing with, which is materialism, things that are day-to-day things. Look how HaShem is different than us. The characteristics of matter pertaining to flesh and blood is such that an empty vessel can hold what is poured into it, whereas a full vessel cannot hold anything more. You have a empty vessel, you want to pour some water in it, go ahead, that's the perfect place. You want to pour some food in there, you can. But if the vessel is full, can't do it. That's the logic of mankind. But the characteristics of matters pertaining to the Holy One, blessed is He, meaning spiritual matters, is such that the full vessel, meaning a person that is full with Torah knowledge, can hold an even greater measure of spirituality, can be gifted even more Torah. The more Torah that he has, the more Torah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can give him, because his additional learning of Torah improves his vessel to the extent that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can magnify his Torah beyond human comprehension. Whereas an empty vessel, a person that is devoid of Torah, a person that does not want to learn Torah, instead wants to watch sports, instead wants to waste their time about other mundane things and does not want to learn Torah, such a person is an empty vessel and cannot hold things of spiritual matters at all. As it says, and it will be if you will listen to the voice of HaShem. This is a pasuk in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1, where it says, V'ayayim shamo'a tishme'u. So we see from here that there's a redundancy in the part that says you will listen. It says you will listen twice, which teaches us that if we listen the first time to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, we learn Torah, we attend the shiur, we invest our time into His Torah, you will listen again at other times, where if you listen in this world, you will also listen in Olam Haba. But if you do not listen at first, you will not be able to listen later. Meaning, if you don't listen in this world, you won't have a share in the world to come. As the Gemara says in multiple places, one of them being in Masechet Shabbat, Masechet Sanhedrin, and countless other places, a person that does not learn Torah has no connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu whatsoever, and therefore there's no Olam Haba for such a person. No Olam Haba, Hashem Yishmor. Another thing that the Tzedis teach, that if you listen to the old, meaning to what you've already learned before, by reviewing it again and again, what you've already learned, you will be able to listen to the new, meaning that the next time that you go over what you've learned in Torah, it will be like a new thing, because the next time that you learn it, you'll perceive new chidushim, new insights into what you've already learned. But if your heart turns away from what you've learned, you learn it one time, you say, listen, I've learned enough. I watched the shiur one time. I read this book one time. I did enough. You turn away from that Torah, then you will not listen subsequently. Not only will a person not get those insights, but they can, chas v'shalom, lose what they already had. So we see from here, Rabotai, that the Gemara gives us clarity of how important it is to listen to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, meaning to learn His Torah and follow what it says. Learn the words of the sages and follow what it says, because it behooves us to do it for our own good, in order for us to attain peace, both in this world and the next world, both with being man and another, and also man and God. Now, the acquiring of peace is certainly one of the things that is, or at least should be, on top of the list for people. Typically, attaining peace increases its place on the priority list as a person gains in wisdom and ages. Usually the two go together, unless the person learns a lot of Torah and can already acquire a lot of wisdom early on, as we see from the great sages of the previous generation, how they acquired wisdom at very young age. There's a story of the Klosenberger Rebbe, Rav Yekutiel Halberstam, Rav Yekutiel Yehuda Halberstam, alav shalom. The Klosenberger Rebbe was already a child prodigy. His father was a giant chacham, but he himself was already known to be a very special boy as a young kid. And one of the stories that his own father never told him was a story that he only found out later on in his life of what a special boy he was. There was one time a man in the community where this man separated himself from God, separated himself from the Torah, and in fact hated it, and did everything he could to stay as far away from the Torah and the mitzvot as he could. But to his fortune, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made sure that he stayed close enough, whether he liked it or not, by making sure that his house was literally next door, connected to the community synagogue. Now, this man didn't really care of what these people were doing inside the synagogue, as long as they don't bother him and they don't make any noise. He was fine. But one night, this man hears some type of strange sounds coming from the synagogue. He's not really sure what it is. Sounds very strange. Thinks maybe there's ghosts. He ignores it the first night. The next night, he hears it again, around the same time. And it bothers him, but he's too lazy to get out of bed, go say something, hoping for it to end soon. 2 hours later, it ends. He swears to himself that if it happens again, he's not going to let this one go. No ghost is going to keep him up. And third night, same exact time, he hears these ghosts again. And he takes with himself a metal stick, goes out of his house, and starts peeking into the synagogue to see what these ghosts are doing, why they're causing so much noise. It's pitch dark, can't see a thing, except there's a little tiny candle in the corner. He walks in slowly, without making a beep, to see what's going on, to see what is this. And as he gets closer and closer, the noise becomes more and more clear, as not ghosts, but rather cries, hysterical cries, cries that are full of tears. And those cries are saying something, and he's trying to understand as he gets closer and closer. And he doesn't want this body that he sees to see it. So he hides behind the walls, trying to peek in, and eventually his eyes see exactly what's there. And it's not ghosts, and it's not some random noise, but rather it's a 10-year-old boy crying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, give me your Torah. Give me your Torah. Let me understand it. Let me engrave it into my heart. Over and over and over again for 2 straight hours. After watching this for 2 hours, the man finds himself crying no less than this young 10-year-old boy. Because now he also knows who this boy is. He's the rabbi's kid. And he starts crying for himself, and he realizes that if this 10-year-old kid is crying to God to get a Torah, to get knowledge, to get clarity, woe unto me, who is much older than him and is not even yearning for Torah. Woe unto me, who doesn't realize what Torah is. And the next day, this man walks into the synagogue along with everybody else and sits down, waits for the prayer to complete before he goes to the rabbi to tell him that he wants to do tshuva. He wants to change his life. He wants to learn Torah. The rabbi is surprised. He's lived next to this neighborhood, next to this synagogue for years. What's inspired you? Who taught you all of this? And the man, without being ashamed, says to the rabbi, your son. Your son Yekutiel, your 10-year-old son, he inspired me. And the rabbi never told his son because he was afraid that his son would become arrogant about it, that his cries influence the person to do tshuva when many times you have people's speeches don't even do half the job. But of course, when a person runs away from kavod, kavod chases him. And Rav Klosenberger Rebbe, the Rav Halberstam, continued to cry to HaKadosh Baruch Hu throughout all of his life, continued to cry during the Holocaust, when the Nazis, Yimach Shimam V'Zichram, murdered his wife and 11 children, continued to cry after the Holocaust, continued to cry throughout all of his life to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give him more Torah, to help Am Yisrael, to have mercy on Am Yisrael. And anyone that had the fortune of hearing any of his tefillot, standard tefillah on a Tuesday afternoon, would hear those very same cries many, many years later. And those cries will even stay in their mind, telling us, why can't we do that? The truth is we can. The truth is that we all can. But the question is, why should we? One of the things that a person tries to acquire in his life is not necessarily Torah, but other things. Money, possessions, all types of desires. Torah doesn't necessarily always come to people on top of their list, and even when it does, the Yetzer Hara makes sure that you always have something competing with it. I once knew an Avrech that Rav Ephraim told me was an exceptional Avrech. Had a mind that was very, very sharp, and he learned with them for years. But despite how sharp his mind is, and despite how amazing he was in the world of Torah, the Yetzer Hara always made sure that money interfered with his value of Torah. Surely he was dealt a difficult hand, financial difficulties, marriage difficulties. And one day he decided to leave the kollel and told Rav Ephraim that he can't do it anymore. Although he's been there for many years, maybe 15 years or so, he decided to use some of his other skills that he had in computers and so on to go and make money working for some technology company that's offering him close to 10,000 shekels, which is literally 5 times, 7 times more than what he's getting at the kollel. At least this is going to give him some peace of mind. He's going to be able to pay the bills without having any issues. And no matter how many conversations he had and how many things and how many people tried to convince him, there was really to no avail, and he eventually made that choice. And he left the kollel and enjoyed the business world, thinking that perhaps he could learn on his own, perhaps he could continue learning, but also working. But of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the Torah based on our mesirut nefesh. The more a person is willing to make peace with God by learning his Torah, by sacrificing himself for Torah, the more HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make his life into a miracle. And while every one of us can rationalize that we all need to work, and you're right, we all need to work, the question is, how much do we contribute to work versus how much do we learn Torah? Well, this man, righteous person, still a decent human being, still a righteous person, he himself says the biggest mistake of his life was leaving the kollel. Why? Not only is he no longer getting that same feeling that he got every single day that he studied at the kollel, but all the thoughts and plans of having financial freedom was simply traps of the Yetzer Hara. Because now, not only does he not have the Torah, but he also, the extra money that he's getting is not giving him any additional freedom whatsoever. In fact, it seems like life has become much more difficult financially, despite him making much more money. We see many times that Avrechim, the more you get to know them, the more you get to know about their lives, it's literally a miracle. Miracle of how they survive and how they grow and how they have the wonderful families. There was a story that was published just today about an Avrech that promised his wife that they're not going to ask for any handouts, they're not going to go borrow any money, they're simply going to dedicate themselves to Torah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give them a house one day without them needing to sell their lungs for some mortgage or anything like that. He and his wife made a deal, and they moved forward, learning Torah year after year, difficulty after difficulty. And one day, as this Avrech is sitting in the kollel, while his 8 or 9 children are at home, school, his Rabbanit is doing whatever she needs to do to contribute to the family, and he is doing what he needs to do to contribute to the family. He's learning in a kollel, and an older man in his 60s comes and asks him if he can sit next to him. Sure. He listens to him learning, and once in a while starts to ask questions. And the same thing happens the next day. And the same thing happens the next day. And before you know it, they befriend each other. After 6 months of this, the older man asks the Avrech, "What do you do for work?" He says, "This." He says, "What do you mean this? But you don't get paid." He goes, "No, the kollel gives me a few dollars." He says, "Do you mind me asking how much does the kollel give you?" He says something like 1,500, 1,600 shekels a month. He says, "You single?" He goes, No, Baruch HaShem, we have big family, 10 people in our family. "Where do you live?" He tells him where he lives. "We have a nice 2-room apartment, Baruch HaShem." He says, "It's not so small for you guys?" He says, "Baruch HaShem, it's small, but we make do, it's okay." He says, "Why don't you get something bigger or anything?" He says, "No, Baruch HaShem, we have what we need." And the old man says to him, he says, "You know, I thought about what you said yesterday about this house, and you see, my wife and I were married for many years, but we don't have any kids. And we have a house with 7 rooms. We don't need a house with 7 rooms. Why don't you guys move into our house, and we'll move into a different house. We'll get something else. Baruch Hashem, we have money. And you just pay me the rent that you're paying now for this small little house, you pay me what you pay over there in this big house. Initially he said, no, it's not necessary, you don't need to do that. He goes, no, I want to. I want to, it's my mitzvah. He says, okay, fine. They agreed, they moved to this house. Baruch HaShem, more room. Nothing changed financially for them as far as having to come up with more money. So Baruch HaShem was a nice chesed. Some more time passed. And they continued learning. And the man told them, listen, you like the house? Why don't you buy it for me? Well, I'm sorry, I appreciate it. I do like the house. The family likes the house. But I can't afford to buy it from you. He goes, no. Buy it for me for, discount. Even if you give me a discount, I can't buy it. He goes, how about this? I'll give you 70, 80% discount. Something like ridiculous discount. That whatever you have that you could give me, give it to me when you can. And in so many words, it's almost free. This is my chesed. How about that? Of course, he took the offer as a fulfilled the blessing for him and his wife that they won't need to borrow any money. They won't need to sell their souls. And they end up getting a better house than they could imagine. And what about that old man? Well, that old man also got something much better than he could imagine. That in his 60s, his wife in her 60s, merited to have a baby for the first time. Where a child was born to a woman that was in her 60s. We see, Rabotai, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sometimes will give us opportunities we don't even realize exist. And the beautiful thing is, the more somebody invests into HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah, the more they make themselves into a better vessel to receive this Torah and the blessings that come with it. The Gaon Mivilna has taken us on a journey where he told us first and foremost that we have to dedicate ourselves to HaShem. We have to dedicate ourselves to HaShem through His Torah. We have to make sure that we send our kids to yeshivot and seminaries. Never send them to any private school or public school that is not full of Torah and mitzvot. And even if you have multiple choices of yeshivot and seminaries, you need to know that you need to do everything possible to get them into the best one. The one that has the best rabbis, the one that has the best rabbaniot. Not necessarily the most glamorous one, not necessarily the one that is the biggest one, but the one that has the best teachers. And not necessarily the best discounts. A person that invests himself and his family into Torah is going to have a much easier time adhering to the rest of what the letter has said over the last year and a half that we've learned it. And before the Gaon Vilna leaves us, he gives us some intricate advice. First, telling us that even if the matters between his mom and his wife, meaning us and others, don't necessarily work out as planned, there's a little bit of tension, there's a little bit sparks here and there, we don't agree on something, he said Lashon Hara, he said this, there's an issue. Even if one of you should do something improper, forgive each other and live in peace for Hashem's sake. I also ask of you, my mother, to guide my children with gentle words so that they will accept them. So up to now is what he told us. Be forgiving. Guide according to the Torah. But now he continues to finalize this letter and saying, I instruct my sons and daughters to honor her, meaning his mother. וגם ביניהם לא ישמע ריב וכעס כלל. And there should not be heard among you fighting or anger at all. אלא הכל בשלום. But rather everything should be settled peacefully. ובעל השלום ייתן לכם ולבניי ולבנותיי וחתניי ואחיי וכל ישראל חיים בשלום. And may the Master of Peace grant you, my sons and daughters, son-in-law, brothers, and all of Israel, a life of shalom, a life of peace. See here, the Gaon Vilna finalizes the letter with the ultimate blessing, the blessing that really every person at some point or another in their life realizes it's the ideal blessing of attaining shalom, attaining peace. When a person is younger and they're trying to acquire the whole world of materialism, they don't think necessarily so much about peace because the process of acquiring material is usually very turbulent. Some people make it more turbulent than it needs to be by stepping and even killing whoever is in their way to acquiring whatever material they want, whether it be a job or be a car or a house or a certain position in the community or a woman or a man. People have no qualms about killing whoever's in their way, not even considering that peace is an option. But as a person gets older, especially as they have kids, the one thing that every parent wishes for is to have a peace of mind. Peace of mind that the kids are really asleep. Peace of mind that their spouse will come home. Peace of mind that there will be peace in the home between them and their spouse and their children. Peace of mind that they'll be able to feed themselves and the rest of the family. Peace of mind that the mortgage or the rent will be paid. Peace of mind that they'll be able to one day have peace of mind. The more a person gets wiser, the more they look for this peace of mind. They want to relax. They want to enjoy. They want to have a peace. But life is not like that. Life we see, people have, is full of turbulence, issues. Suddenly, the neighbor decides to do some things in your yard. Suddenly, the landlord doesn't want you as a tenant anymore, even though you have an agreement saying otherwise. Suddenly, the equipment in your house doesn't seem to function. Suddenly, your job is somebody else's. Life is full of turbulence. A person could wake up one day thinking that he has a colleague or a friend that is their best friend, that is their best colleague, only to learn that this person is really not their best friend, but perhaps more of like a best enemy. So there are turbulence and issues everywhere. Question is, how do we attain this peace? The issue here is that first a person needs to know that peace is something that a person needs to work on. It's not something that simply happens by itself. It's not like all of the nature that HaKadosh Baruch Hu instilled into the world that works with or without your knowledge. The radio waves work with or without you. Whether you believe in radio waves or not, they'll be there. Just like whether you believe in God or not, He's there. Air is there whether you like it or not. Water will be water no matter what you do. And it doesn't matter what scientists think that created this world, even after having the ingredients for water, they still can't make any. Showing you that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has his fingerprint in the creation in multiple ways. But nonetheless, a person that looks to acquire this peace has to first and foremost identify what peace is. Second, he has to see who talks about peace, who teaches about peace, who prioritizes peace, who had peace. The truth is that if you look for peace like most people do, you'll never attain it. Because most people look for peace from materialism. They want to have peace after they have enough money. But as the Gemara says, someone that loves money will never have enough money. And the more a person does what they do, whether it's being stingy or saves every penny, works too hard, And by too hard, I don't mean the effort, too hard meaning amount of time where they forsake the Torah learning in order to acquire more money. These types of people never end up having enough money. Where even if they have millions, it's never enough. And many times the people that are wealthy, that you hear about in the news, have much more stressful lives than the world knows. The world only sees them from a small tidbit of what's in the news and what's in different types of media. They see a picture that these people are on vacation on some fancy boat that costs $1 zillion. They see them at some theater. They see them during their fun times. They don't see the other 24 hours. That's not full of fun and, quite frankly, has more turbulence than the average person. So when a person spends too much of their effort trying to acquire peace through materialism, that once they have the house, then they'll be in peace. Once they have this car, then they'll be at peace. Once they marry this person, then they'll be at peace. And once they have this job, then they'll be at peace. They can have these ambitions, they can have these priority lists and these to-do lists and these goal lists and a bucket list and all types of lists, only to learn that most of the time that list changes as you go along, and even more so, even if you acquired the entire list, you still have not attained even 1 ounce of peace, because now you have to work on a new list just to maintain the existing list. So acquiring material is just simply no way for a person to acquire peace. Surely some of those things create a more convenient life, have certain tools that can make life more peaceful. But peace is not something that comes from materialism, no more than happiness is not acquired by materialism. On the other hand, if a person looks at those few, those fortunate few that did acquire peace, they will time and time again see the faces of our sages as those that acquire peace. Whether those sages are the ones you read about in the books from a few thousand years ago or a few hundred years ago, or it's the Gedolei Ador that are still among us, or it's even a Ben Torah today that dedicates all of their energy into acquiring peace between him and God by learning his Torah nonstop. Putting all of that required turmoil and exerting it into the Torah, into the mitzvot. As Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai teaches in the Mishnah in Avot, that when a person takes on themselves the burden of Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu takes from them the burden of the world. So yes, there is a burden that creates turbulence, that creates problems, tribulations. But the person that dedicates their life to Torah can acquire for themselves a peaceful life, because that burden is used for Torah. That turbulence are used for Torah. Now, interestingly enough, the acquiring of peace in itself is the process that the Gaon Vilna is teaching us. Well, first he tells us that in order for us to acquire this peace, a person has to be forgiving. You have to let things go. If you want to win, then that means you don't want to have peace. People that are focused on winning and they develop an addiction to win will never have peace. Will never have peace in their marriage, will never have peace in their business. Because no matter how right you are, if you want peace, you have to be willing to simply give in, knowing that the other person is wrong. But nonetheless, it's better to be wrong. It's better to be right and, in essence, submitting to the wrong side at times than to be at war, to prove your righteousness. Now, of course, there's limits to that. So the first thing that the Gaon Vilna tells us is that he instructs his sons and daughters to honor his mother, but only after he tells his mother and his wife that they have to do whatever they can in order to forgive each other, even if there's something that's wrong, even if they did something wrong to each other. She said this about me, she looked at me that way. Be forgiving. And if you're going to speak to my children, speak to them with gentle words. Gentle words doesn't necessarily always mean tell them everything that they want to hear and let them forsake the Torah, chas v'shalom. Gentle words mean that even if you rebuke them, there's a way to rebuke. Every kid has its way. Some kids you have to speak to them firm. Other kids you have to speak to them lightly. Before you judge your kids, judge yourself first. Many times parents are disappointed in their kids because they thought that their kid is going to be the next Gaon Mivilna. They thought that their kid is going to be, since they're growing up frum and they're going to yeshiva and they're going to school, they're going to be perfect, only to find out that that kid doesn't necessarily agree right away. And there's one time a story that one of the famous Israeli singers told to Tzvi Yechezkeli. He says that one of his fellow Breslovers called another one, 10:30 at night, worried to death. You have to come over. What? What happened? You have to come over. I got to talk to you. Sure, I'm coming. 10:30 at night. He figured something's really wrong. Adultery, financial issues, sickness, something. They go. They sit alone. The guy looks like death is on his face. He says, what happened? He says, I need your help. Okay, that's why I'm here at 11 o'clock at night. What happened? He says, my son. Your son? What's wrong with your son? Sick? No. What? What's wrong with your son? He says, I see him. When he says blessings, he has no kavana. Nothing. Doesn't even care who he's praying to. I'm telling you, I see it in him. He says the blessings, but he doesn't even care. Now the guy is not really sure. Wait, is he talking about the older one? Well, the older one is a Bachur Yeshiva. Learns half the day or more. Can't be him. The one that's right below him, he's also in Yeshiva. He's not really sure. He goes, can you, which one? Which son are you talking about? He says, my son, Yuda. Yuda, what son is that? Which one is that? The one in Yeshiva? He goes, no, Yuda. The 6-year-old. Yeah, Rabotai, the 6-year-old. The guy was worried to death because his 6-year-old doesn't have kavanah when he's blessing. Now, some of you are laughing and some of you are crying from laughter and some of you are agreeing in this. The ones that are laughing and crying from laughter are more right than the ones that are confused. Because, again, although we would all like for our sons to be the Klosenberger Rebbe at 10 years old that cries at shul, it's not realistic. Some of us will not have that kid. In fact, most of us won't. But it can become that one. Endless amount of tears have to be poured for our kids to grow in Torah, to grow in Tefillah. And one of the greatest teachers is ourselves. So if a person wants to give chinuch to his kids, the first thing they need to do is be what they say they want their kids to be. You want your kids to be dedicated to Torah? You be dedicated. You want the kids to have kavanah when they pray? You have kavanah. Don't cry that your kid does not have kavanah when every single time you're about to start praying, you delay the prayer by a few more minutes so you can finish a phone call. And better yet, sometimes you even look at your phone during the prayers. That kid will do what he sees. So the first thing is to know that at times you're going to have certain kids that don't necessarily need much boost. They're already on that path. They're programmed. They're wired that way. They're disciplined that way. There's certain kids that are going to need a lot of help. There's certain kids, you have to convince them. There's certain kids, you have to cry for them. There's a very special Jew in Eretz Yisrael who goes from town to town teaching people about Tikkun HaBrit. And one time he told a story to one of our Avrechim, Rav Ohad Cohen. He said there was years I've been traveling from place to place, but there was always this one family that stood out to me from everybody. He says, what? He says, this family, this guy, he's a regular Jew. Perhaps he makes time to learn Torah every day. He's a frum Jew, but he's not a Talmid Chacham or anything. He's not like a known Avrech, known rabbi, nothing. He's just a regular Jew. But he has 10 kids. And every one of those 10 kids is a tzaddik gamur. Tzaddik. Learns amazing manners. Just amazing tzaddikim. Like you see, it's like a little army of tzaddikim. All of them angels, one after another. And I went from town to town. I met all types of people, up, down, sideways. Never saw anything like this. And I always wondered, what's the secret? So I looked into the father. When he learns like a regular bachur. When he prays like everybody else. I never understood. Until one day, I approached him about it. I said, listen, I've been following you for a few years. I'm sorry, but I have no choice. I have to ask you, what's the secret? He says, what secret? He says, you have 10 sons, Baruch HaShem. Each one of them is a bigger angel than the next. How did you do it? The guy smiles. He says, no. My wife, every night, since we had our first baby, every night, she wakes up in the middle of the night. She opens up a Sefer, Tehillim. She starts crying hysterical to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to make our kid Talmidei Chachamim. Every night, never misses. She cries over my kids. The rabbi says, now I know. 40 years I've been chasing families all over the city to try to fix this, and that. And this woman already has the secret. Sometimes people think that those tears go for nothing. They don't realize how valuable they are, the tears of a mother. So the Gaon Vilna tells his wife and his mother to have peace, to give in. He tells them to speak to the kids in the ways that they need to be spoken to, some more, some less, some this, some that. He then instructs his kids to respect his mother, which in itself is something to learn from, because his kids were tzaddikim. They were not they were not kids that needed to be told, respect your grandmother. Surely, Shulchan Aruch says so. If you look at the Shulchan Aruch, and you read the Siman 240, in the Halachot number 23 and 24, it talks about how you're supposed to respect your parents and even grandparents. But in section 24, the Ramah says that he saw what the Ma'arik brought about 600 years ago, 700 years ago. And the Ma'arik says, he writes, he preceded the Ramah, preceded the Shulchan Aruch. He wrote that a person does not need to honor their grandparents. He specified grandfather, but anytime it says grandfather, it's referring to the grandmother also. Anytime it says father, it's also referring to the mother too. He says, a person does not need to honor his grandfather like he honors his father. And the Ramah disagrees with him and paskins otherwise. He says, no, I saw at the Ma'arik, Kadosh, Kodesh Kodashim, what he wrote. But I don't think what he meant is that you don't need to respect your grandfather, like some people understand, but rather, you need to respect your grandfather, you need to respect your father, but just make sure you know that the respect you have for your father is greater than your respect that you have for your grandfather. It's greater. Your responsibility to your father is much greater. You still have to respect your grandfather, but not as much as you do your father. And this is also something that our own dear Rabbi Ephraim brought in his responsa Achtov L'Yisrael when it comes to the deen of honor for the grandparents. If someone has a death in the family, are they during that year where they're sitting Shiva, are they allowed to do a celebration if it's the grandfather and not the father? So there's a whole tshuva over there for anyone that wants to see it. But the point being is, he's passing in the same exact way as what the Ramah says, which is that yes, you have to honor the father, sure, but you also have to honor the grandfather, perhaps not as much as your father, but still you have to honor them. So, of course, the children of the Gaon Vilna knew that they have to not only honor their parents, but honor their grandmother. So what is he reminding them for? That they should honor his mother. The answer is, Rabotai, is that a person that looks at business like they should looks for opportunities everywhere. I remember years ago, when I was in the business world, my focus was so narrow that I looked at everything as opportunity or not. And I don't mean everything opportunity or not, like is this stock or bond or whatever investment an opportunity or not, but everything, including people. If I saw a person, I can measure him up within 30 seconds. What does he do? How much money does he make? And how much money does he have? And whether he is a legitimate lead that's worth my time. Once I answer those handful of questions, I proceed. If I see that this person is a regular, normal person, blue-collar worker, cleans up the garbage in our offices, works in the building, I can befriend him, I can talk to him, give him guidance, but I'll never talk to him about doing business with me. Why? There's no point. I'm looking for people that have a lot of money. On the other hand, if I see that this person has a career that typically yields a six-figure or more income, $100,000, $200,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year, he's already in his 40s or 50s, which means that he's already paid off his loans and perhaps already acquired himself at least $500,000 or more in liquid assets. He's on a career trajectory that will improve his situation even further. And he's not one of these know-it-alls that wants to do everything on his own. Perhaps he's looking for somebody to help him because he's busy. That's a person that I'll talk business to. If he doesn't meet those requirements, for one way or another, there's no business. Simple. And my focus was very, very narrowed. And this is how I would look at things. Same came with ideas. If you wanted to bring an idea, you had to bring that idea with facts, not your feelings. I didn't care about your feelings, because that's not business. Now, if you're in a business world and you're focused on what will yield you the most amount of profit, you can take that and replicate it and earn a lot as a result of it if you manage your time correctly, which also is part of the analysis itself. But if you look at just like, I'm just going to be like one of these people that just networks all day they go to coffee meetings, all day they go to conferences, usually those people end up being the people that get coffee for other people. They never end up making any money. Why? Because all day they're just like looking at whatever is there. They don't really decipher anything. They don't actually target anything. They just look for anything. You know, it's the people that could just simply do business with anything. Those people never amount to anything. At best, they can make a living for themselves. But nothing more than that. The people that usually become the rainmakers are ones that are much more focused. Of course, you in business, if you're going to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that focus has to vary at times and also stop at certain times, but nonetheless, anyone that understands what I'm talking about so far understands that it is a necessary tool in order for a person to get the most amount of success. In your servitude of Hashem, it's even more so. The more a person wants to succeed in their servitude of Hashem, the more a person wants to build themselves an endless mansion in Olam Haba, the more a person wants to be favored by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the moment that they open their eyes, the more a person wants to know as much about God as humanly possible, the more a person is going to narrow their focus on every single thing in their life, not just their business, but their business included, but everything that they do, on the way they eat, on what they eat, on where they go and why they go there, and how long it takes them to go there, on what they wear and how much they spend on it, and where they wear it to and when do they wear it. I bought something new, but should I wear it on Shabbat only, or should I wear it on just an average Tuesday? Am I here to impress the neighbors and the colleagues, or am I here to honor the Shabbat? The point is that a person looks at every single opportunity, like the one that I told the young man that asked me a question at the last event, that when a person narrows their focus to serve Hashem to the maximum, even things as simple as taking a shower have an order, have a structure, because he looks at everything. She looks at everything as an investment. What will I get out of this? I'm going to contribute an X amount of time to this book. I'm going to contribute an X amount of time to this shiur. I'm going to contribute an X amount of time to this mitzvah. I'm going to contribute an X amount of time to this blessing. I'm going to contribute an X amount of time to this prayer. How will I get the most out of it? Because a person that looks at it with such a narrow focus surely is much more likely to get the most out of it. A person that's nonchalant, and in fact even careless altogether, and just goes with the flow and does whatever, maybe they'll be religious, maybe they won't for the rest of their life. Maybe they'll eventually change, maybe they won't. But surely they're not going to influence anyone else in a positive way. Needless to say, it'll be a surprise if they themselves stay in a positive way. Because a person that just does whatever they do whenever they want to do it, unfortunately that person is going to get what they give. As the Mishnah in Avot says, based on the effort is the reward. There's a reward that is obviously in eternity, in Olam Haba, in heaven, but is also a tool that HaKadosh Baruch Hu rewards you with in order to earn more reward. Where it says in the Mishnah, Schar mitzvah mitzvah, the reward for a mitzvah is another mitzvah. Meaning the more effort you put into doing a mitzvah, the more HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give you tools, bigger tools, stronger tools, to make that same mitzvah even better and even greater. The more difficult it is for you to pray, but you do it, the more you'll be inclined to have even more kavanah the next time. The more you dedicate to learning Torah with mesirut nefesh, with effort, and you break that klippah, and you do whatever you can to stay awake, to stay alert, to stay committed, to finish those few hours. No matter what distraction is there, the more you'll feel the beauty and joy out of the Torah, and the more you're going to get chidushim and all types of beautiful things that you're going to get out of this Torah, and the more inclined you're going to be to do it again. The more difficult it is for you to give tzedakah, but you overcome it, the more HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give you money in order for you to do it again. But if all you're looking for is to coast, to just do the minimum, to do whatever you can, when you can, that same feeling of nonchalant from Shamayim comes to you. You don't care, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't care. You're going to pray like, I'm just doing it because I need to, because I'm religious. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to answer you like, I'm just here to answer whenever I want to answer because I'm God. You give tzedakah like, I'm just going to give tzedakah because you're supposed to do something good because everybody else is giving. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give you parnasa, like, because he's feeding even the ants and the measles and all of the other germs in the world, so might as well feed you too. The more you put into it, the more HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts into you. So now when a person looks at every single thing like he does when he's at the peak of his performance in business, but he does it when he's with mitzvot, when he's with Torah, when she's with mitzvot, when she's with Torah, the more they're going to look to make everything into a business opportunity with God. Hence the reason why the Gaon Mivilna tells his children something that is as clear as day to every 6-year-old Jewish boy. Honor your parents. But he tells them this. Why? Before I told you to honor your grandmother, before I told you to honor your mother, you knew it. You were obligated to do it. But now that I told you, it turned into an additional mitzvah for both of us. Because now that you honor your grandmother, you're not only honoring your grandmother because you should, because you have to, but now you're honoring your grandmother, you're now honoring your father because you're listening to him. Now that you're honoring her, you're listening to your father. It's kibud avayim, which is a biblical mitzvah. And even more so, you're allowing me to fulfill a mitzvah. Because now by telling you to honor her, I am honoring her. And I'm fulfilling a mitzvah. Transforming something that's pure logic into literally endless rewards in 3 different directions. A person that is glued to HaKadosh Baruch Hu will tend to do more and more of that intentionally. A person that's trying to be glued to HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be directed into doing this, even unintentionally, but nonetheless, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give him or her the opportunities to do it, because they want to, even if they don't know how. And you'll see many times that if you're more committed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you'll find out how your actions yield much more fruit than you thought they would. You thought that helping this person would yield you a mitzvah because you're helping another fellow Jew. He was struggling. He was having a difficulty. You figured, why not? He asked for help. I helped him out. By the time you got the money back, or some time passed, you found out, no, you didn't just help another Jew. You helped the convert. You helped an orphan. You helped the widow. HaKadosh Baruch Hu magnified the mitzvah exponentially because you wanted to do the mitzvah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu found a way to give you even more. Because now it's not just helping another Jew. You helped one of the 3 specific ones that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, they're exceptional. They mentioned 36 times in the Torah that I'm their father and their mother. By you helping them, you not only increased your reward, but you also became partners with God. So a person that is looking for opportunities will always get HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give him even more. So this is why the Gaon Vilna is instructing his children to honor his mother when it's clear and it's obvious to everyone that he should and that they would. But then he elaborates further and he says that there should not be any fighting or anger at all, but rather everything should be settled peacefully. And may the Master of Peace grant you, my sons, daughters, son-in-law, brother, and all of Israel, life and peace. He gives them the ultimate blessing that they have peace, but he tells them that they have to work on it, that they have to run away as far as possible from any animosity, any anger. We see that peace is one of the ultimate blessing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us that we have when he gives it to us. In Parashat Bechukotai, a parasha that's known for many curses, a parasha that's known for the scariest thing that the Torah states for those that forsake Hashem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu also tells us blessings, unique blessings that He will give us when we follow what He says. Where He says, "V'natati shalom ba'aretz," you will have peace in the land. No Palestinian terrorists, no Nazis, no foreign governments telling you what to do, nothing. You're going to have peace. Peace means you'll have parnasah. Peace means you're going to have peace among you. Peace. So in the very same parasha that He tells us there's going to be war, havoc, nightmare, disease, all the worst things in the world, He says, but if you do what I say, v'natati shalom ba'aretz, I'll provide peace. The exact polar opposite. Birkat Kohanim. The Kohen blesses Am Yisrael. If you're a Sfaradi, you go to shul, you hear this every day in a minyan. If you're Ashkenazi living in Israel, you also hear this every day in minyan. In a diaspora, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But the Kohen blesses the community with the blessing of peace. Vayasem lecha shalom. HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring peace upon you. Who doesn't want a peace between him and his wife? Who doesn't want peace between her and her husband? Who doesn't want peace with their children, with their partners at work, with their customers, with their Creator? So, the Gaon Vilna tells them that you have to avoid fighting. Shouldn't be any fighting. Shouldn't be any anger. Everything in peace. But we all know that that's not necessarily always possible. Even the Gaon Vilna himself fought some heavy wars against people that he thought were heretics. Thought that they were going away from Hashem and worshipping people instead. So we see here that although peace is critical, it's not something that you could always have. Meaning that there are times that peace is not only not possible, but it's forbidden. Now, Rabbi Yaron Reuven writes in a Sefer Ayelet HaSachar in Parashat Vayikra, chapter 19, verse 16, that a person that overcomes their anger and forgives another for speaking lashon hara against him does not lose out from this forgiveness. Most people, if they get hurt by somebody, they don't want to forgive. Oh, he borrowed the money from me and he didn't pay me back. Oh, she said she'll pick me up and she didn't come on time and she didn't even come at all. She forgot me there. Oh, I heard they talked about me, not in a positive way. I wasn't even there to defend myself. You know, somebody wronged you. Somebody wronged you. Everybody has something or somebody's. But there comes a time where it's a past memory already. It's not bleeding still like it did on the first few days. Time has passed. She made you angry. She said something she shouldn't have said. It was very annoying. It was very hurtful. Okay, time passed. Let it go. Some people, I'll never let it go. Those are evil people. Never letting it go, that's a problem. Because never is a long time. Never is a long time. And never is unconditional. But most people, they just see that as a figure of speech. They don't really mean never. They just mean under the current conditions of what they think. So as long as things are the way they think they are, we see that Aaron HaKohen burdened himself with other people's tribulations and made sure to chase peace. As the Mishnah in Avot says, Aaron HaKohen rodef shalom, he chased peace. He would go to someone that just got into a fight with somebody else, with his fellow, listen to them, see what they say, and then tell them, I just saw him, and he said he feels terrible what he did to you. He says he can't even believe he did it to his best friend. And he feels terrible about it, but he's embarrassed. He doesn't know if you're ever going to forgive him. The guy hears this, he goes, what? Oh, really? He does feel bad about it? I thought he didn't even care. I thought I was nothing to him. And then Aaron HaKohen would go to the other guy. And the other guy would tell him how frustrated he is with him. And, I hate her. And Aaron HaKohen would say, oh, you still mad? He was practically crying in front of me just now. Because of what happened. He feels so terrible about it. He can't believe that he said that to you. And he did that to you. And all of a sudden the guy's steam calms down. He goes, oh, really? He does feel bad? I was just saying that. I didn't mean it and this and that. I said, well, he gets them together. They start hugging and kissing and loving each other again. By the time they found out that Aaron HaKohen is the one that made this peace out of nothing, they realized that the problem was really nothing. And many times couples would want to go to the Bet Din to get a divorce, and Aaron HaKohen would make sure to make peace, to chase peace, to go from house to house, to make sure that there's peace in the house. And this is why the Torah says that when Aaron HaKohen left this world, all of Am Yisrael, both the men and the women, everyone came to his funeral because he chased peace. And thousands of young kids with the name Aaron cried more than everybody else because they knew that they are only in this world because of Aaron HaKohen making peace with their parents, and they were the result. Harav Ovadia in Sefer Anaf Etz Avot, in chapter 1, Mishnah number 12, he says that there are some commandments that a person is not obligated to seek out proactively. Like the mitzvah of Shluach HaKen, of sending a mother bird away before taking her eggs or fledging. This applies only when one happens upon a nest. Where the Gemara in Masechet Chulin says that a person might think that he's supposed to look for different nests in the hills and the valleys in order to fulfill this mitzvah. But that's why he has to see that the verse in Deuteronomy chapter 22 verse 6 says that if a bird's nest happens to be before you, that one is only obligated when the nest happens to be before him, not to go look for this mitzvah. But that's not the same of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu writes in the Torah about tzedek, righteousness, opportunities to bring righteousness to the world. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. You have to chase peace. You have to chase righteousness. You have to aspire to chase peace like Aaron HaKohen. Not chase war. Not look for wars. But look for peace. So when a person says something that wronged you, says something against you, said Lashon Hara about you, Rav Steinerman writes that you should give in. And you won't lose. Why? Because although we know that the person that said Lashon Hara about you, during that same sentence, they lost all of their merits that pertain to that mitzvah. And all of them went to you. And if you forgive them, those merits will go back to them. So one would think, why should I forgive them and lose all those free merits? At least I got something out of the deal. She said that about me. At least I got some merits. Why should I forgive her? Then I'll lose those merits. Rav Steinerman says, no. You forgive her and all of those merits go back to her. But the new merit that comes to you as a result of your forgiveness is a world apart and much greater than what you would have had otherwise. The new merit that you get is much greater for forgiveness. Such is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's love for peace. There was once a Talmid Chacham that borrowed $2,000 from somebody, and they signed a shtar. When you are a Jew and you lend another Jew money, you don't charge them any interest, or else you're going to lose your Olam Haba, and they lose their Olam Haba. So you give them a free loan. So this young Talmid Chacham borrowed $2,000 for free. And they agreed he's going to give him the money at a certain time. They have to write on a little letter, such and such borrowed this amount of money from such and such. He's going to pay it back at this such and such date. That's it, simple. You don't need lawyers, doctors, nothing. Simple. And it's a very, very big mitzvah to do. If you have the opportunity to do it, if you have a Jew with Yirat Shamayim that you know is going to honor the agreement, that you know is a person that's not looking to just take advantage, but a person that is going to honor the agreement, and you have an opportunity to lend them money, it's a fantastic opportunity, even bigger than tzedakah. It's even bigger than tzedakah. Why? Because with tzedakah, there's always that feeling of, he feels bad. He feels bad. Oh, you handout, you give him a handout, so he's always going to feel bad that you gave it to him. But if you give him the loan, you're giving him an opportunity to make the money in a different way. It's a big mitzvah. Give him a job, it's even bigger. It's even bigger. But don't think, oh, listen, instead, from now on, I'm never giving anybody any tzedakah. I'm only going to lend the money. I'm only going to lend money to the yeshiva. I'm only going to lend money to the rabbi. I'm only going to lend money. No. One thing has nothing to do with the other. A person needs to know that there's a mitzvah of tzedakah, there's a mitzvah of maaser, but there's also a mitzvah of lending money. So, and expect that if you lend money, at times you're not going to get it back. But that's part of the tikkun itself. But nonetheless, when you do lend money to another fellow Jew, sometimes they can't return it to you. They just don't have it. And you also have to be very careful that if you're going to borrow money, you know how you're going to return it. Don't borrow money if you have no way to return it, because that already says you're a wicked person. So return it, only borrow it if you know you're going to be able to return it. Don't be like one of these degenerates that opens up a credit card and a bank account and a loan account and borrows a bunch of money they know already they can never return. Unless they win the lotto and get the money in some miraculous way. That's wicked people. Those are thieves. But if you have a way to return it, no problem. So one time there was a Talmid Chacham, borrowed $2,000 from another person. They signed a shtar. And as the time came, Talmid Chacham returned the $2,000. Now he thought that the guy that lent him the money, once he got the money back, he's going to rip up the shtar. He's going to rip up the piece of paper, and that's it, finished. The deal is done. Time passed, and the guy comes to this Talmid Chacham, and he says, no, come on, what's my $2,000? Because, what are you talking about, $2,000? I paid you back. Because, no, you didn't pay me back. What are you talking about? Because, no, I paid you back. Of course, I paid you back 6 months ago. Because, no, you didn't pay me back. If you would have paid me back, I wouldn't have the shtar. I wouldn't have the paper still. I would have ripped it up. And I'm diligent about that. I didn't rip it up. So obviously you stole me the money. So this Talmid Chacham didn't know what to do. He went to Rav Avram Genechavsky. Talmid Chacham, giant. He says, what do I do? I paid this guy the $2,000. But now he's saying that I still owe it to him. Should I take him to Bedin to prove it to him somehow? Rav Genechavsky says to him, listen to my advice and pay him again. It's worth paying $2,000 in order to live in peace with your neighbor. Yeah, you're right, you paid him. And you go to Bedin, they may rule in your favor, they may rule in his favor, you never know. But if they rule against him, you're not going to acquire peace. There's always going to be that tension between you. Give him the extra money. Give him the $2,000. You're not paying him back here. You're buying peace with that money. You're buying peace. That's how valuable peace is. The Gemara says, there's a big tzaddik named Rabbi Yochanan ben Torta. What kind of name is ben Torta? Torta means cow. Rabbi Yochanan, the son of the cow. What kind of name is that? There was once a Jew, good, righteous Jew. did Torah mitzvot, and he had a fellow rich kid, son of a rich person, that would come, talk to him and lend him money for his business. And one time this Jew borrowed this money from this person, and he couldn't pay him back. He said, I'm sorry, I can't pay you back, but I'm going to give you my cow. Take my cow. My cow is all I have. It's the way I make my parnasah. Take the cow. So he said, fine, I'll take the cow. He was a drunk, an alcoholic, a degenerate. But he wanted his money. He doesn't care how this Jew pays him the money back. He kept trying to convince this Jew, why don't you go work on Shabbat? Stop being religious already. He says, no. Can't work on Shabbat. I pray to my God. He goes, yeah, but you pray to your God every Shabbat, and look, you don't have enough money to provide for your family. You have to sell your cow. He says, listen, I'm a Jew, I have to do it. He goes, yeah, okay, so don't be a Jew. Be a Gentile like me. No, I can't. I love my God. I'm sticking with my God. So you're going to give me your cow, or you're giving me the cow. That's it. No, there's no refunds. He goes, that's what I have to do. That's what I have to do. So this guy takes the cow, and he sees this cow is a special worker. Works like 5 cows. But then, a few days later, stops working. The man that worked for him can't convince the cow to move. They call him and tell him, listen, boss, this cow is broken. It doesn't want to work anymore. So what do you mean it doesn't want to work? He sees the cow does not want to move. Doesn't want to move. Immediately, he goes to the Jew and says, hey, you cheated me. That's why you gave me that cow. He said, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you right now. I'm on my way to the synagogue. He said, no synagogue. Listen to me. You cheated me. I'm going to hurt you. Why did you sell me this cow? He goes, listen, there's nothing wrong with the cow. It's a good cow. It's a perfect cow. I just got to go to pray. He goes, no, you're not praying right now. You're going to deal with this cow. He forces him to leave his path, go to his field, to see what's going on with the cow. And he sees the cow is sitting. And the Jew says, oh, yeah. Now I know. Okay. He comes to the cow. He whispers in its ear. The cow gets up and starts working. This guy says, what did you do? Magic? How'd you do that? What'd you say to it? Because I got to go to the synagogue. No, come on, just let me go now. Okay, I'll let you go, but just tell me, what did you say, if in case it happens again? Because it's not going to happen again. Okay, so what'd you do? He says, you're not going to understand. You're a guy, you're not going to understand. He says, just tell me, no, come on, between friends. He says, listen, my cow, as long as it was with me, it knew that our Torah forbids us to work on Shabbat. Not just the people, but even our animals are not allowed to work. So my cow never worked on Shabbat. Today is Shabbat for us. So the cow doesn't want to work because it's Shabbat. Can I go now? The guy was shocked. He says, what? He was left dumbfounded. Didn't even want to drink anymore. Didn't want to eat anymore. But it was a moment of truth for him, and he simply could not believe that this cow keeps Shabbat. He couldn't believe that an animal that cannot speak keeps Shabbat. And nothing. He's not obligated to keep Shabbat. But he doesn't keep anything, doesn't do anything other than fulfill his desires. He realized that he has no connection to the Creator, that the cow has more connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu than he does. And the following day, he comes to the Jew and he says to him, I need you to help me. I need you to help me become a Jew. He says, what? You become a Jew? You're a drunk alcoholic. I'll stop being an alcoholic. Yeah, but you could live. You're rich. You don't need to be a Jew. What do you need to be a Jew for? You have everything you want. Live your life. What do you want to be a Jew for? Because I need to be a Jew. That cow is not going to have a bigger connection to God than I am. I want to be a Jew. Please help me. Please, old friends, all this, all that. He convinces them. He starts teaching them. Little by little, that goy stopped becoming a goy. Stopped being a goy. And little by little, he became a Jew. And when he converted and became Yochanan ben Avraham, he also took on himself Yochanan ben Torta. Yochanan, the son of the cow. The cow that helped him convert to Judaism. And his dedication for Torah and abandonment of all of the materialism in this world continued to grow as he dedicated all of himself into the world of Torah. Little by little, he became one of the greatest sages of the generation, mentioned in the Gemara by name, meaning he got to the level of being able to resurrect the dead with his words. Rabbi Yochanan ben Torta. So this very same Rabbi Yochanan ben Torta is mentioned in the Gemara Masechet Menachot, saying that the first Bet HaMikdash was destroyed on the account of three sins: Avodah Zarah, murder, and immorality. The second Bet HaMikdash, although there was a high amount of scholarship in Talmidei Chachamim, was still destroyed because people hated each other for no legitimate reason. And from there, Rabbi Yochanan ben Torta says we see that hatred among Jews is as serious as all three of those cardinal sins: murder, avodah zarah, and immorality. When someone like that tells you that hating each other and looking to simply stay in disagreement forever is the reason why the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, he's thereby telling you that that fight you have with your neighbor, that fight you have with your spouse, that fight you have with whoever, and you're not willing to forgive, you're not willing to relent, you're not willing to give in, you only want to show everybody you're right under all costs, you are now the reason why the Bet HaMikdash is not being built. It's not because of those people from 2,000 years ago, it's because of you. When a person looks at things from that perspective, the feeling of hatred and animosity should decrease. The yearning for peace should increase. Eliyahu Navi says in Tana Devei Eliyahu in chapter 26, Hashem says to Klal Yisrael, my sons, have you ever lacked for anything? All I ask of you is that you love each other, honor each other, and be fearful of causing pain to one another. The Masechet Derech Eretz brings Rabbi Eliezer HaKapar, who says, love peace and despair dispute, and despise dispute. Peace is so great that even if Klal Yisrael worships idol worships, Avodah Zarah, but yet lives in peace, Hashem says that He will not punish them. On the other hand, dispute brings destruction. A city that has machloket will eventually be destroyed. A Bet Knesset that has machloket will eventually be destroyed. A home that has machloket will eventually be destroyed. Such is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's love for peace and hatred of machloket. Now, when you look at some of the midrashim about what happened at the time of Noach versus the time of the Tower of Babel, the generation of dispersion, you see that both generations were full of sinners. Although there were only a few hundred years in difference, it seems like HaKadosh Baruch Hu was more harsh on one than he should have been if he's not as harsh with the second one. What do I mean? The generation of the flood made all types of sins against each other. They would steal money from each other. They would do whatever they could to win under all costs. If that means to become rich, I have to send all my friends to go steal from this guy, by all means. If that means in order to get that girl, I need her to convince her to leave that man, by all means. HaKadosh Baruch Hu eventually destroyed that entire generation of Noach with the flood. On the other hand, the generation of the Tower of Babel, they were not at war with each other. They were at war with God Himself, building a tower to reach the heavens in order to kill God. That was their goal. Building a tower to make themselves a name. Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says that in his time, and the times before Mashiach, there will be people that build yeshivot, not for the sake of God, but rather to make themselves a name. In essence, making a war against God. The Tower of Babel was looking to make a war against God, but yet God did not destroy them. Confused them, turned their languages upside down, which created tension, made some of them into monkeys, elephants, all types of weird things, but He didn't destroy the whole world, like He did with the generation of the flood. So the Midrash in Bereshit says, from there we see that when they sinned against Hashem Himself versus sinning against a fellow man, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was more harsh on the fellow man than he was when people were going to war against him. On that I had a little chidush, that it doesn't mean that a war against fellow man is more significant in the eyes of Hashem and more sinful in the eyes of Hashem, according to His Torah, than sins against Him. It doesn't mean that. What does it mean then? It means that when a person sins against God, they desecrate God's name. They're not doing things that are antithetical to the creation itself. They're acting according to the creation, which gives them free choice, that if they were to do tshuva for it, they can get into a better life where they could become part of the world, a good part of the world, and even earn themselves a share in the world to come. They'll still have to pay for that sin when they die, unless they do Kiddush Hashem, but nonetheless, even if they sin against God, desecrated God's name, they're not opposite of the creation. On the other hand, when they sin against man, they steal from each other, they hurt each other. Although that sin doesn't necessarily forsake their olam haba. A person can hurt another person but still have a share in the olam haba. They'll get punished for it, but they could still have a share of the world to come. But they do lose their right to live in this world if their clock runs out according to God's clock. Why? Because their sins against another man are antithetical to the creation itself. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us in such a fashion that a person that comes here and fulfills God's will also be part of the creation in order to bring good to humanity. Whereas a person that does not fulfill God's will brings bad to humanity and in essence hurts the creation itself. So the generation of the flood went to war with each other, while the generation of the Tower of Babel went to war with God. The generation of the flood performed against the creation itself. They were stealing from each other. They were causing harm for each other and thereby lost their right to live. in this world. Perhaps they got another chance in Egypt. They got reincarnated in Egypt and also in Sodom and other places. They're part of their Erev Rav, but nonetheless, they got other chances to fix that crime they made in this world, meaning that they didn't necessarily lose their Olam Haba right away. They lost their right to live in this world because of the way they treated each other, but they didn't lose their eternity yet. The generation of the Tower of Babel, on the other hand, their sin was against God. And the Gemara in Masechet Yomah, page 86, says that the desecration of God's name is not resolved by a person simply saying, I'm sorry. It's not resolved by a person simply saying, oh, I'm not going to do it again. The beginning of that tshuva for desecrating God's name begins with death. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want to eliminate everyone permanently. That generation of the flood got another chance because they still technically had a share of the world to come, even though they went against each other. That generation of the Tower of Babel, if they died that way, they lost everything. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives that person more time in this world in order to give them more chance to do tshuva before they die. Because if they die that way, nothing can help them. The Menurat HaMaor brings the Midrash that quotes David HaMelech in Tehillim, chapter 99, verse 4. Ata konanta mesharim, you established fairness. And he says that a person that has a claim against his fellow, if they use the Torah to resolve that claim by going to a Beit Din, that Beit Din will judge, will rule, and they both agree to comply with it. And therefore that Beit Din will bring peace. And that's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu establishes fairness. On the other hand, HaKadosh Baruch Hu also tells you in his Torah that if your fellow's donkey is struggling and your enemy's donkey is struggling, you go and help your enemy first. Why? Because that will create peace. When your enemy sees that you're helping him, automatically he's no longer your enemy. And this brings us to the question, if peace is so important and HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves it so much so that in the Mishnah, the last Masechet Uketzin, the last Mishnah, chapter 3, Mishnah number 12, Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta says, HaShem found no vessel that's better in holding the blessings that he gives to Am Yisrael than peace. As he says, HaShem gives strength to his nation, HaShem blesses his nation with peace. In so many words, meaning that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you a blessing, that blessing in itself is not enough. You have to be able to enjoy that blessing. So peace is a factor that enables us to benefit from those blessings. Just like a vessel enables us to preserve the liquids and preventing them from going to waste. So peace is extraordinarily important. Shouldn't we be at peace with our enemies? All the Erev Rav, all the liberals, all the heretics, all the people that invite missionaries to shuls. Like somebody asked me today, why don't you make peace with Goldberg? Why don't you make peace with this one? Why don't you make peace with that one? Is it not better for Am Yisrael to make peace? Somebody asked me about a week or two ago, how can I make peace with my enemy? The answer that I gave him is the answer I'm going to give you. In order to make peace with your enemy, the first requirement is for them to stop being your enemy. You cannot make peace with an enemy. You can cease fire, but you can't make peace. Peace is not made with enemies. So long as they're your enemy, there is no peace. Not because I said it, but rather because HaKadosh Baruch Hu said it. The prophet Isaiah, in the name of God, says in chapter 48, verse number 32, En shalom, amar HaShem l'reshaim. No peace, said HaShem to the wicked. So long as a person is acting against God by inviting missionaries to shuls and thinking nothing of it, speaking against God and His Torah and thinking nothing of it, and in fact continuing to do so, as long as a person distorts the Torah and is a megaleh panim b'Torah against halacha, there is no permission from HaKadosh Baruch Hu or His Torah to make peace with such a person. Not for the sake of him, not for the sake of the community, and of course not for the sake of God. There is no peace with such people. Peace with such people is a sin against the Torah. That righteous kings made a mistake in previous generations and got cursed from God as a result of it. There is no permission to make peace with people that are against God. You can cease fire, but you can't make peace. So although peace is loved by God, you cannot make peace with everyone. Some people, it's a mitzvah to be at war with them, because you're at war for the sake of God. So you see, Rabotai, over these last 40 lectures, we learned quite a bit. We learned that we have to make sure that we take HaKadosh Baruch Hu seriously. We teach ourselves that this is not something that you can just do on the side, but rather you have to do it as a priority. Priority number one. Your daily education must include Torah in it. If you're brand new, half hour a day is all you can take, by all means, but don't think that's enough. It's good to start with. If you're no longer new, you're already keeping Shabbat for a year, 2 years, you have to graduate to at least a couple of hours a day. Because if you're not learning 2 hours a day, your situation is literally in horrible shape. Horrible shape. Of course, we have to make sure that we don't just worry about ourselves, we have to worry about our family. You have to make sure that your family goes along with you. So aside by leading by example, you have to make sure that you never complain about the cost of Jewish education. In fact, you should celebrate with your children every time you write a check to the yeshiva for the full price. Look, kids, this is what I work for, to pay the yeshiva tuition. That's what I want. And you celebrate it with all the seriousness in the world. You celebrate paying the seminary with all the seriousness in the world. Why? This is what we work for. This is what we have money for. So you can get a Jewish education. And not an upside down education that they bring to people today by having all types of mentally sick people teach kindergarten kids that they can be boys if they're girls and girls if they're boys. Hashem Yishmol. You have to be excited to pay for the yeshiva education. You have to be excited to write a check, maaser, involve the whole family. Guys, we're writing maaser right now for the yeshiva, for the kollel, for the kiruv organization, for the rabbi. Here's the maaser. This is what I work for. This is what I work for. Every time you finish a masechet, every time you finish a good book, have a seudah with the family. Why? This is what we're here in the world to do. That education for your kids is not only going to come from school, from yeshiva. It's going to come from how the parents treat Torah. Not just how you bless and how you pray and how you act in shul, but how you act at home when nobody else is looking. If your kids see that you're excited to learn Torah, your kids see that you celebrate your learning of Torah, That's the greatest education you can possibly get. When your kid sees that you're dancing around your little table because you just finished a masechet, your kid's going to want to learn a masechet, even if he doesn't know what a masechet is. So our education starts with us and starts with our house. But of course, never think that you're finished just by that, because Kol Yisrael Aravim Ze Lazeh. All of Am Yisrael are responsible for each other. For a Jew to know what Torah and mitzvot are and not cry over his brothers and sisters that don't is a crime. We have to make sure that we invest our time, our effort, or our money into helping other Jews get closer to Hashem, whether they're getting closer to Hashem from nothing or they're getting closer to Hashem from where they're at, and it's simply not enough. Investing into a kiruv organization, a kollel, something that publicizes Torah but also gets people closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, has to be top priority on the investment list, more than your bitcoins and your stock portfolio and anything else. Why? Because if you care about Hashem's kids, He's going to care about your kids. If you only care about your kids, you're putting your kids at harm. We have to make sure that we do not waste our time. The Gaon Vilna warned us with a horrific, terrible, scary warning of how idle speech is one of the reasons that HaKadosh Baruch Hu decrees for a person to spend time in Kafakela. And anyone that watched our 4-hour shiur about Kafakela knows that's not a place that he wants to be in. It's not a place that she wants to be in. Rabbi Yehuda Ftaya, in chapter 88 of his Minchat Yehuda, gives details of what happens in Kafakela, and I promise you, it's not a place any of us ever even wish our enemies to be in. Needless to say, ourselves. And Kafakela is not limited to time. And the Gaon Vilna and the Arizal discuss it in different places, where the Arizal says that a sentence in Kafakela can be a year, 5 years, 1,000 years, or more. Horrible, atrocious punishment for idle speech, needless to say, for forbidden speech. Person must educate themselves on a second-by-second basis by simply limiting what they use their time for. Learn halacha, learn musar, but not one and not the other, rather both, says the Gaon Vilna. Help each other, forgive each other. Look for ways to turn your mitzvahs into a spiritual business, whereby you're not looking to make money from it, but you're looking to earn more mitzvot from it. Look to see in how you can multiply each mitzvah to be more. You go into shul, to a shiur Torah, why don't you bring somebody with you? You're going to give some tzedakah, why don't you ask somebody to give also? Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was very, very wealthy, yet he would ask his friends to donate money. Not because he needed their money, because he could have handled it all on his own, as he showed in one of the examples in the Torah in Masechet Ta'anit. But rather because he wanted to share the blessing, the opportunity with his fellows, and give them the opportunity to donate also. You're donating money to a good cause. You know that the organization is good, the kollel is good, the kiruv is good, the rabbi is good, whatever is good that you're donating to. Don't be selfish. Get other people to donate to. Call your friend, call your father, call your mother, call your brothers. Tell them, listen, I just donated $500 to this. Why don't you do it too? More times than not, you saying you donated it that you donated to such cause is enough of a reason for somebody that likes you to donate without even looking. Because most people, they only want to donate to places that they know, the places that they connect to. And it takes time to know and it takes time to connect to. And by that time, who knows if they're going to have that day. But if you say, listen, I just donated $500. I just donated $5,000. Why don't you do that too? It's a good cause. It's a mitzvah. Your $500 donation can turn into $5,000 or $500,000. And guess what? Gadola me'aseh min ha'oseh, says Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. A person that enables others to do a mitzvah is even greater than his own mitzvah. The reward that he will get for enabling others to donate is even greater than the reward that he will get for his own donation. Meaning that if one truly understood what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is saying here, they would literally become a money raiser for free on the side, on top of their job, on top of everything else. More than anything else. If you found a good organization, if you like what we do at Bezrat HaShem, or you have something out there that you agree, that you like, and you believe in, surely you should spend some time raising some money for it. Without two questions. Don't ask for a procedure, don't ask for a contract, don't ask for nothing. Just simply do it. Why? It's for your benefit. Even more than the benefit that it is for the organization, and definitely more than the benefit of anybody else that is donating. You get more benefits than everybody else. If a person truly understood the magnitude of Gadola me'aseh min ha'oseh, they would literally spend time every day, an hour a day, calling their friends and family. Guys, listen, I just donated $500. I'm looking to raise money. For what? For good. Mitzvah. Nu yalla, you have $500. Give me your account. I'm donating on your behalf. Come on, let's do it. Get their friends to do it. Why? I want mitzvot. And also I want to help my friends. The Gaon Mivilna says a person needs to take mitzvot so seriously as to look at it as a business. The Rav Mibrisk used to tell his children to do the simplest things. Eat the bread. While they were eating. Okay, I'll eat the bread. But no, just eat the bread. Okay, take some bite of the bread. Now drink. Okay, Abba, I'll drink. Now eat some of the pasta. I was gonna eat it. Okay, eat it. After a while, these kids ask him, Abba, why do you do that? I mean, you see that we're eating. Eventually we're going to get to the bread. Eventually we're going to get to the pasta. Eventually we're going to drink. Why are you going to do that? The Rav Mibrisk says to his children, if you were just going to eat the bread and the pasta and drink just because, then you just because. But if you're doing it after I said it, then it turns into a biblical mitzvah of honoring your father. Now you eating the bread after I said it is a biblical mitzvah. I want a mitzvah. I want you to have a mitzvah. Why? Because I love you. A person that's looking to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in everything, in every way. And guess what, Rabotai? When a person lives such a life following this protocol that the Gaon Mivilna gave us in his IGGERET, this letter culminates with get peace. Get the blessing of peace. No more war with those that you shouldn't be at war with. And get the ultimate blessing of truly having peace, both in this world and the next. Be'ezrat Hashem, this series will be for the merit of Klal Yisrael, to have true peace with each other, true peace with their Creator, true peace with their Father in heaven, and needless to say, true peace with themselves. Be'ezrat Hashem, each and every single one of us will take this series to heart, engrave it there, and never let it out. So we can make HaKadosh Baruch Hu proud that we're learning His Torah, and bring even more pride and merit to the Gaon Mivilna, that was so glued to the Torah that even his letters to his family are still our Torah Mishamayim today. Thank you for learning with me this series. Thank you for contributing in any way that you could. And most importantly, thank you for continuing to learn with us, sharing these lectures. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll see each other and learn with each other in our next series very soon. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.